Hello people, how are we all doing? Welcome back to Jamie Talks Celtic. We've got another day here to talk about Celtic and everything else that's going on within the club. Just want to make sure that everything is hunky-dory with... Yep, it's all good. Just want to make sure everything was good with the audio and stuff. It's all good there, but yes, another day. Like I said yesterday, Celtic drew one each with Middlesbrough at Celtic Park. And, there's been quite a lot of talk last night of how the game went. A couple of people said we actually played okay. A couple of people weren't particularly inspired by the performance. But, it was just a pre-season friendly match, I think. I watched a wee bit of the highlights earlier on. I think Duran took his goal really, really well. Fantastic finish. He looks as if he knows where the back of the net is, which is, a big, big thing for us. We need somebody who's going to score his goals next season. That was a real problem last season. I know Iheanacho was scoring goals, but he wasn't starting games. He wasn't, fully off. He wasn't in the team most of the time. I think he only started one match under Martin O'Neill, as he said, as a starter. Which is pretty incredible when you look at it, And it was the game that we actually lost against Dundee United at Tannadice. So, that game was out the way yesterday, but today, we've got a couple of topics to talk about and stuff. A couple of wee things I've been seeing happening over social media, a couple of rumours flying about and all that, so we'll get to them. The first one I want to talk about is the return of a man who decided to leave Celtic a couple of years ago, decided he wanted to move on, and that is Kyogo Furuhashi. Now, Kyogo to Celtic, rumours of a shock return gather pace, as I've put here. I'm kind of 50-50 on this one, if I'm being honest. I don't really know. I've never, ever been one for wanting players to come back. Particularly players who they really were eager to move on, which Kyogo was. I know he did a fantastic job for Celtic over the years. He scored goals in the Champions League. He scored vital goals against Rangers and stuff. And, he was a real top player, to be honest, for Celtic. I actually think, if I'm being honest, I think Kyogo was the best striker we've had since Henrik Larsson. People can look down the road of Edouard, Dembele, Hooper, McDonald, Samaras. For me, I think Kyogo was the best striker that we've had since Henrik, because he was just so prolific. And, like I said, it wasn't just goals he scored on a consistent basis. It was the fact that he scored in big games as well for me that, that's how I really feel about, big players. They come up in big moments and stuff, and Kyogo did. He scored loads of goals against Rangers, scored goals in Champions League, Europa League, home and away. So Kyogo was a really, really good player for Celtic. I don't think I want him back, though. I don't think he's achieved anything since he's left Celtic. His reasons for leaving Celtic, only he will know. Brendan Rodgers came out at the time after Kyogo left and said, it was something that he'd spoke to me about a long time ago that he wanted to move on. So Kyogo wanted to leave Celtic for a large, a good part of a good chunk of time. Whether that's financial or whether that is, he wanted to be in the Japanese kind of thinking for the World Cup or whatever. But it didn't work out for him. He went over to Rennes. He was very, very poor over there. Goes to Birmingham, and he actually started off okay at Birmingham. I thought he was going to be a really good player for them, but, there was just so many games he wasn't scoring goals in that. So, would Kyogo be an asset to Celtic if he came back? I think so. I think he would. But I don't know. There's something in my head that just says, why are we inviting old players back and all that? And, we've done it with Jota already. Different with Kieran Tierney, I've kind of been saying that as well. Different when you're a boyhood Celtic fan or you're a fan of your boyhood club and that, you move on for... I don't blame Kieran Tierney for going to Arsenal, do you know what I mean? It was a step up in his career financially and playing at a higher level. Arsenal, even at that time, they could have won trophies and stuff. It's not as if he was going to a Crystal Palace or no disrespect to Crystal Palace, although they have won trophies over the years, so probably a bad example, but no disrespect to like a Brentford or a Bournemouth or whatever, where you're really waving goodbye to trophies and stuff. He went to Arsenal, and Arsenal are a top team. So, and then coming back, he's been a boyhood fan and stuff like that. So it's different with kind of guys like that, in my opinion. Kieran Tierney was always destined to come back to Celtic, some capacity in his career. So aye, it's kind of different and stuff like that. Kyogo, I think when he'd come back, he would score goals again because I think obviously not just as a striker level, right, but as in a football level and stuff. The most thing that people kind of perform well is if they've got confidence, right? And since Kyogo's left Celtic, he's clearly not had the confidence that he once had when he was at the club, And then obviously goes over to Rennes. You go a number of games, especially as a striker, you go a number of games where you're no scoring goals. Your confidence dips, absolutely dips and stuff like that. And it's difficult for a striker to get back into the swing of things. We've seen that over the years. You know what I mean? You see it with strikers constantly, right? Where, they're in a rich vein of form or whatever. And, either it just kind of they're doing really really well. They'll score goals week in week out consistently and stuff, and then you see these strikers that kind of hit a wee bit of dip of form, and it's because they're not scoring goals, and it's really really difficult to get back in. You see these with the records over the years, like we all see stats and stuff like that, and if you see like a player going a certain amount of games without a goal and stuff like that, you're kind of like, geez, oh man, you know what I mean? This could go in a wee while here, and it ends up kind of dragging on and stuff. And then you see players who, are in a rich vein of form, and they're trying to hit records of consistent matches of scoring goals and that. So, I mean, guys like Kyogo and that, I think Kyogo would be an asset to Celtic. It's just something that's just telling me, go and get a new hero, go and get new heroes. We've got Camilo Duran in now who looks the part, like I said earlier on. He took his goal really well. That's 2 goals in 2 games for him. And the thing is, if Kyogo does decide, or Celtic decide they want to bring Kyogo back to Celtic, then how do we know that he's going to get a game? You know what I mean? Like I say, he's not been in good form over the last couple of years. He's did really, really poorly at Birmingham. I know the Birmingham fans are not happy with how he's performed at the club and stuff like that. And then Duran's came in for £6 million, so it's not as if you're just going to bring Kyogo back in and go, right, wee man, you're right back in that team and stuff. But Kyogo knows where the back of the net is as well, and you know what? It's not the worst shout I've ever heard. I do not. And one thing I'll give Kyogo as well is, right, and I've said this before as well, is when Odsonne Edouard left Celtic, I believe that he just wanted to move on, and I believe that showed in his performances and stuff. I believe Edouard, guys like him, I'm not going to use the term down tools, because I don't think he down tools, but I just think he thought, I think he checked it, right, and I think he thought, his mind was elsewhere. Whereas Kyogo, I was really, really surprised when Brendan Rodgers came out and said Kyogo wanted to leave for a long time and stuff, because that wasn't shown in Kyogo's performances. But Kyogo was still, hunting down defenders, hunting down goalkeepers, scoring goals, looking enthusiastic, celebrating his goals with a big smile on his face and stuff like that. So there was no indication that Kyogo wanted to leave Celtic at that point, in my opinion. I don't think any Celtic fan was kind of thinking that was the case, that Kyogo looks as if, he looks as if he's went away. You get that with some players, you know what I mean? We've seen it over the years with like Hatate. We can tell in Hatate's body language and the way he looks and stuff that his mind is probably elsewhere, doesn't want to be at Celtic anymore. And you can tell that in certain players. I always remember like Stan Petrov, when Stan Petrov was at Celtic, and he was wanting to get that move to Aston Villa and stuff. His last year at Celtic, and he was just kind of, if you actually go back and watch, right, Stan Petrov last year at Celtic and that, and the title celebration, he was like, you know what I mean? And maybe that is just how some people's demeanour are. I don't know. But, like I said, there was no indication that Kyogo was unhappy at Celtic or he wanted to move on and like that, or anything like that. So, would I welcome Kyogo back? I probably would, in a sense. I'm 50, like I said at the start of this, I'm 50-50. I'm chopping and changing my mind here. I just think, yes, he'd be an asset to Celtic if he came back, but on the other hand, I would love to just go out and get another £4, £5, £6 million striker to come in and see how he goes. The thing is with Kyogo is, we know what he can do here, you know what I mean? We know that he can perform at this level. We know that he can come up in major moments and stuff and score goals in Scotland, score goals at a European level for Celtic. So, thing is as well though, we don't know if Kyogo's lost a yard of pace or he's just not quite the same player as he was when he left Celtic. I don't know. Something's not happened for him anyway over the last few years. And I don't know what that is, because like I say, he started off quite well at Birmingham, And I thought, this guy's going to go on and maybe have a fantastic career at Birmingham. They might even get promoted because Birmingham started off the season last season really, really well, if you remember. And you've got guys like Iwata down there as well, who's left Celtic to go to Birmingham. He's performed really well down there. And the thing is, Chris Davis, the manager of Birmingham, who was Brendan Rodgers' assistant, as we know, at Celtic for a long period of time, and Leicester and stuff like that. He's actually, you can tell that he looks at Scottish football when he rates Scottish football in the same kind of vein as English Championship and stuff like that, because, like I say, he took Kyogo, he took Scott Wright for Rangers, he took Ben Davies for Rangers, you know what I mean? So he knows that, the Scottish game, you can perform down there, you know what I mean? You can perform Scottish players and players who have played in Scotland. Like, he's took Lyndon Dykes as well, so it's like, it's just a shame how it didn't really work out for Kyogo in that sense, because it probably was financial in a sense, but it probably was, I want to get in that Japanese squad for the World Cup. I want to be alongside Maeda and Hatate, even though Hatate underperformed as well. I want to get my, I want to get myself in the door and stuff like that, because the Japanese manager did come out and say at one point in time that, if you're going to get in my team and you play in Scotland, you need to think about going to a higher level. And the thing is with Maeda was clearly just one of his favourites anyway, because Maeda played regardless of, where he played, and the fact that he played for Celtic. So Kyogo clearly had a point to prove to him, and it's just not worked out. It's not worked out at all. Japan were decent in the World Cup and that, they could beat out Brazil, but, it's maybe Kyogo's looking back and thinking, what, I had a really, really good spell up there, I scored goals, everybody loved me. That was probably my best time, you know what I mean, of playing football and stuff like that. So maybe he's looking, to come back and forget about the international career thing, you know what I mean, and just focus on playing for your club, trying to win trophies, as many trophies as you can. You'll make a decent amount of money at Celtic, that. It's not as if you're going to be skinto your whole life, you know what I mean, playing for Celtic and that. Okay, you might not make as much money as you would if you went down south and, he's at Birmingham and Rennes and all that, but sometimes these players have just got to have a wee look at themselves, I think, and think to themselves, you know what, I've only got one career, let's try and win as many trophies as we can. Let's try and, have something to look back on when I'm 70, 75 years of age and be proud about, the fact that I've went from club to club to club to try and make as much money as I possibly can. Do you know what I mean? But that's just my hope. What's happening, Paul? How you doing, mate? Still hope to get new signings in the door. Me too, mate. Me too, hopefully, man. Need more signed left back strikers. Well, I spoke about this yesterday about the players that we need in my opinion. I think that we need a goalkeeper, a left back, two wingers, central midfielder and a striker. So 6 players. But I mean, again, I think we need a centre half. We possibly need a right back as well to accommodate for Alistair Johnson or whatever, because Anthony Ralston, as we all kind of agree, that Anthony Ralston isn't really up to the job at Celtic. As much as I don't like to say that, because, he's a good Celtic man and stuff like that, isn't he? Anthony Ralston, but, just come back to the Kyogo thing. I mean, that would be 2 strikers in the door, Kyogo and Duran. That would definitely make us stronger, you know what I mean? If you're looking at it from the outside point of view, you're looking at the players that would be in the squad at Celtic and all that. You see Duran, Kyogo as options. You see Osmond maybe up there as well and stuff. If that's the case, if we do go and get another striker, I think that'll be the end of Johnny Kenny, if I'm being honest. I don't think Johnny Kenny is going to have a career at Celtic. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that Martin O'Neill will probably try and move him on, alongside about another 10 others that are likely to move on for Celtic. And, so, we'll come back to that in a bit. But what I talk about is Martin O'Neill defending the board or just speaking his mind. Now, I want to talk about the interview done after the game yesterday. Now, I'd like to think that I'm quite good at balancing kind of certain news stories and stuff like that. I like to think that I'm good at balancing, trying to see both sides of situations and stuff like that, right? Now, a lot of people are saying that Martin O'Neill was now just a yes man, as the term goes, and he's accommodating the board and he's been a puppet for the board and all this, right? Now, after looking at that press conference yesterday after the game, I've got to say that I'm I think Martin O'Neill is making excuses for the Celtic board. There's no doubt about it. There is no doubt about it. He is. When it came to the Ian Atchell situation, he was just he was defending him by saying, you know what, there's two sides to every story. He was talking about that and the Sriracha thing. It's a difficult one for Martin O'Neill though. He's the manager of the football club, right? So, you know, he's not just going to come out and start slating the board and slagging the board and all that. He's employed by the club, right? So any of us who are employed by people, I'm not talking about people who are self-employed here, obviously, right? But people who are in employment by other people, we all do what our gaffers want us to do. We're not going to come out and publicly slag the bosses off, are we? We're not going to come out and... You might do it behind people's backs, not that, right? But Martin O'Neill is on camera. He's talking to the media. He's not going to come out and slate Dermot Desmond. He's not going to come out and slate Michael Nicholson. So for what you see Martin O'Neill in the press conferences in front of the camera and stuff like that, just like every other manager, as soon as you start going down that road, it's curtains. You know, you look at Antonio Conte when he was the manager of Spurs. He came out and he was like, "Isn't it just the players that there's a whole problem within this club and all this." He was gone days later. Same with Amaron when he was Man United manager. He done the same thing. He came out and he questioned the board and he questioned the running of the club and all that, and he was gone. He was gone. Do you know what I mean? And the way Martin O'Neill's probably thinking about it is, you know what? I'm not happy with how this transfer window's going. I'm not happy with how Ian Atchell has been let slip through my fingers, how Sriracha's been slipped through. But what is the point in making it worse? What is the point in Martin O'Neill coming out and, you know, I don't mean feel like the outside point of view. What's the point in making it worse inside? He knew what the Celtic board were like. He knew how we operate. He knew when he accepted that job off Dermot Desmond, how Dermot Desmond, Michael Nicholson and all these other guys operate. He knew it. So there's no point in coming out now and start slating the board or questioning. I'm kind of fed up with this whole he's a puppet thing. He's just pandering to the board and all this. It's like, you don't see any managers slagging off their board unless they're wanting sacked. I think Amaron and Conte were both wanting sacked. You know what I mean? I brought the two up there because I think they were both wanting out the club. They were wanting a payoffs and to move on and stuff. And Martin O'Neill clearly wants to do a job at Celtic and that. So, you know, I there's no doubt in my mind he's making excuses for the Celtic board. But I don't blame him for it, to be honest with you. I really don't. I mean, maybe one day in the future he might come out and say, you know what, I wasn't happy with this situation, that situation. But until then, Martin O'Neill's the manager of the football club, right? He's got to come out and try and bring as much harmony to Celtic as he possibly can. You know what I mean? Board level, you know, staff level, and the supporters and stuff like that. So Martin O'Neill's got a very, very difficult job to do. You know what I mean? And I feel sorry for him in these press conferences because these journalists are only doing their job as well, and they're trying to push him. They're trying to get answers off him, how he feels, if he's frustrated, if he's angry, if he's upset by the fact that these players are not coming through the door. But you know, one thing he did say yesterday is he's very, very hopeful that we're going to get some players through the door. Kind of feels like there is maybe one or two happening. I seen a report earlier on that it could be up to 4 signings this week. I very much doubt that's going to happen, to be honest with you. I can't see 4 players coming through the door within a week. But you never know. You never know. I'd be more than delighted to talk about this all week, to talk about players coming through the door and stuff. But I just can't see that happening. I think we will sign a couple within the next week or two. You know, the way he kind of answered the question yesterday was yes, we're very close to getting some stuff done and all that. It's looking at possibly Hassan for Real Oviedo, who had a very good World Cup for Egypt and stuff like that. So possibly, you know what I mean, possibly maybe him. But at the end of the day, there's no question, there's no doubt about it in anybody's mind, in any of your minds, that we need players. We need players immediately. You know, somebody was saying to me on TikTok, you need to stop whinging, you know, these players are going to come through. And like I said yesterday, I just feel like I'm repeating myself all the time. But until things change, then that's all I'm going to be. But we need players now. We need players in the door. You know, we've got a whole week ahead of us here, right, of training for the AC Milan game next week, right? That this could be an opportunity for players to come in, bedded into the squad, train, get to know their surroundings, get to know, you know, the thing is with players coming, right, it's not just about the whole football aspect of things. Us as football fans, we kind of look at things through, the football microscope and all that, and go, oh, this guy's here to join the club and that, right? What about, he's got to settle into the country, he's got to find a house, he's got to find, somewhere that he wants to eat, food, food's all different all over the world and stuff like that. He's got to find an area he's comfortable in, he's got to find a place where he's fine to commute, you know what I mean, to the stadium. He's got to, these people have got to settle in the country as well. Do you know what I mean? If you're, look at Tirana, he's came for Qarabag, you know what I mean? That's a good distance away. He's a Colombian guy. This is a whole new culture for Duran. This is a whole new thing. It's not just about training on the football pitch and, working for his team every Saturday and all that. He's got to adapt to a whole new country and a whole new culture. That's why we need these players in just now, so they can adapt to not just the football club, but our way of life, our the country that we live in and stuff like that. It's not just, these guys are human beings, do you know what I mean? It's not like playing FIFA, where you bring somebody in or that and you're just concentrating on the football. You know what I mean? These guys have got lives, There's not just them as well, they've got family. If these guys have got kids, they need to make sure they find a good school for them. And, there's all sorts of things. If their missus, what does their missus want to do with their time when they're here? You know what I mean? I think a lot of people forget that. You know what I mean? It's like, you're out playing football half the time. You know what I mean? You've got your partner at home and all that. They've got to, they've got to adapt to your way of life as well. It's not just about the individual, it's about their family. You know what I mean? And maybe I'm just thinking too much about all this stuff, but that's why I want these players in now. I don't want them in wait. And then, say we wait to, the last day of the transfer window, whatever, right? Or whatever. We've already started the league by then. We've already started our European campaign by then. And then these guys are going to have to adapt to the culture and adapt to how they play, and adapt to their way of life outside of football. And that might distract them for the football side of things. That might distract them because they're worried about their family, or they're worried about how they're not quite settling in the country. Or you've got to give people time. Do you know what I mean? You've got to give people time, and that is why, I'm just envious of these clubs that get work done early. You know what I mean? These clubs that don't mess about. You know what I mean? And I'm sorry, but I'm thinking Rangers, right? I know that Rangers have won hee-haw over the last few years, right? But one thing you've got to give them credit for is they get the job done early. They bring people in, they make quick decisions and stuff like that. All right, it doesn't always work out for them, right? But you've got to admire the fact that they are going out and they're trying to get their business done early. Like I say, not just for the football side of things, but for the whole cultural side of things. That is why I want these players in now. We've signed one player. And we're almost in August. It's unacceptable. This transfer window has been open for, what, a month? Over a month now? It's not good enough for Celtic. Do you know what I mean? It's really not good enough. It's not quick enough. It's not direct enough. They're not being sharp enough. They're trying to dilly-dally on things. Now, at the end of the day, if the reports are to be true that we do sign 4 players next week, I'll be the first to be on here and giving it, happy days. Do you know what I mean? It's about time. I'll be excited, especially if I'm liking the calibre of the player and stuff like that. Some of the names that were linked to it. I'm happy with, like I say, Hassan. You've got Malouda, who apparently, a young French player who is Flores Malouda, the ex-Chelsea player, his son. He's already had under-20 caps for France and stuff like that. There's links with him. Don't know how true these things are, but at the end of the day, some of these things are going to come to fruition at some point. We are going to sign some players, but it's just about the timing here. It's about the timing that we're getting frustrated about. And I totally understand that. I totally get why. I mean, I'm the same. I'm very, very angry about how it's taken so long because we're being lied to. But anyway, it's Sunday here. It's the day of the World Cup final tonight, guys. Argentina against Spain and that. So nothing ever really happens with clubs on a Sunday. Everybody's shut down for the day and shut down for the weekend and all that. So maybe over the next couple of days, we will see some players come out at Celtic, and I've been saying that for quite a number of weeks now and stuff like that. But one of these days, I'm going to have to be right in it. It's like even a broken clock is right twice a day or something like that. But it's frustrating, but also we've got to be hopeful as well. There's no point in sitting here. That's the thing people were saying, comments to me and that as well. you won everything and all that, and you're still angry and all that. And I get it to an aspect, but then, like I said, we need to just progress. As Paul Lambert said in an interview the other day, you can't just stand still. You don't spend anything, you stand still. And that Celtic cannot afford to stand still after last season. We've been standing still now for the past few seasons, and it is almost caught up with us. Almost a whisker away from catching up with us last season. And, Rangers have spent, Hearts are doing some business, Aberdeen are doing business, Hibs are doing business. As it stands, we're standing still. You know what I mean? And it's just frustrating. But we'll see what happens within the next couple of weeks and stuff like that. I'm trying to think of any other players. Elliot Watt has moved on. He's moved on to I can't remember the name of the team, but he's away in Turkey. I genuinely thought Rangers were going to sign him. I thought he was one of the best players in the league last season, Elliot Watt. He's a big Rangers fan in that as well. He got a match banned, didn't he? And he's just left. So, it was surprising to see him move on. I would have taken him at Celtic, to be honest with you, if he'd have wanted to come to Celtic. But, there's players in Scotland. This is the thing as well, right? Let's talk about this. There's players in Scotland who are good enough to play for Celtic outside of Celtic. We should have been in the market for Braga. We should have been in the market for Maswanise, and we should be in the market for Elijah Just. Those three players would improve Celtic. Without a doubt, they would improve Celtic. I'm not saying we need to go after all three of them, but that's three players in our own country right now as it stands. That deals would be fairly simple to get over the line. I would imagine if Celtic were really willing to go and get their players, we could sign all three of you guys. We absolutely could. You know what I mean? I'm not saying just focus on Scotland and Scottish players and all that, but that's three guys that have proved that they can perform in Scotland last year. Three guys that Maswanise is one of the top goal scorers. Elijah Just was outstanding. He's just been, come back for a really good World Cup for him personally. Scored a couple of goals. And Braga was player of the season. That's three players that you could just go like that, right? There's a bid. I'm sure, absolutely no doubt that, they could sort out personal terms. That wouldn't be a problem whatsoever. But Maswanise, Elijah Just and Claudio Braga would all come to Celtic. They would all jump at this chance of coming to Celtic if they were offered. You know what I mean? But for some reason, Celtic don't want to spend money on these players. It's kind of as if we don't want to give other Scottish teams money in case it improves them and they can get and spend that and stuff, which is just a stupid way of thinking. If you're going to go and buy a player, you're buying that player for the asset that they've brought. You know what I mean? Braga was outstanding last season for the large part of last season. That's why he got Player of the Year. He was brilliant. Maswanise scored goals on a consistent basis for Motherwell and a very, very good Motherwell team. And Elijah Just was fantastic. You know what I mean? Every game that we all seen Elijah Just playing in, I think that we're all impressed. Do you know what I mean? So, these guys are there. These guys are actually already there. They're already at our disposal. Let's go and get them. But I don't know what the thing is as well, right? So say Celtic, even just one of the names that I just mentioned there, right? Say it comes out within the next couple of weeks that Celtic go and get one of the guys. Why is it taking so long? Why is it, say we go out and get Elijah Just, right? You're not telling me the World Cup's been a hindrance to that, because there's players, Morgan Rogers is signing for Chelsea and he's still in America. He only played last night. So the World Cup isn't a hindrance to sign players. You suppose if you're going to say Elijah Just, right, go and have a wee break and all that now, pal, you know what I mean? You're being at the World Cup and the agents deal with all this stuff. You know what I mean? Morgan Rogers just signed for Chelsea. He's not in the country. He's been playing football consistently for weeks now. So the World Cup isn't a hindrance. Why are we waiting on World Cup ending? You know what I mean? It's the same with Hassan. It's done. He's back. Egypt were at the World Cup a week and a half ago. This is the thing as fans. We're looking at excuses. We're trying to make up in our heads why Celtic aren't doing what we believe Celtic should be doing. And you're trying to think of all these different scenarios. Is it the World Cup? Is it we don't want to give Scottish teams money? Is it that we're waiting on money coming in the door? Is it this? At the end of the day, the money's there for Celtic. The money's there already, regardless, right? The players can be signed from any point in the fucking globe that you want to sign them for. Doesn't matter if they're sitting on a fucking beach in Barbados, right? You can get deals over the line. Their agents sort that stuff out, man. They've got these things in this day and age called mobile phones, right? If deals want to go through, then they can sort it out. Not a problem whatsoever. You know what I mean? I'm not having this bullshit that, cause our players on holiday or cause our players at a World Cup or he's doing this and that he can't be signed. Anybody can be signed right now. Celtic could go out and sign anybody right now they really truly wanted to. But for some reason, we're stalling and stalling and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And I'm just, as like I said yesterday, right? If we go into this Champions League qualifier with Dane Murray as one of our centre halves, I'm fucking done, man. I'm going to be absolutely fuming, and I won't be the only one. I won't be the only Celtic supporter. If we go into this Champions League qualifier with Dane Murray at centre half, or any of these other fucking guys that don't deserve to be in the starting lineup, then I'm going to be furious, man, because we've had so long, learn our lessons for last season. We get put out off a fucking pub team. We get put out off a complete and utter pub team last season. Do you know what I mean? And it's as if we're going down this same road again. We're going down the same road of allowing this to happen. And I'm just fed up with it, man. Something's got to change at Celtic. But anyway, that's the two topics that I've came about so far. If anything else comes up, I'll do videos on them and stuff like that. It's just been an incredible last couple of days. Even just over the weekend, Sriracha no coming back, Ian Atchell no coming back, Martin O'Neill's comments, drawing one each with Middlesbrough, where half the stadium, well, 3/4 of the stadium doesn't turn up. Linked with players, and it's just, there's so much going on at Celtic right now, but nothing that we're wanting to see happen, nothing that we're really looking out for, and that is players coming through the door. That is the thing, you know what I mean? That's the thing we're sitting waiting on. What's happening, Colin? How you doing, mate? Thanks for the comment. My apathy towards this and previous Celtic boards goes back 50 odd years. The reason being the board only see the team as an asset to sell to improve their bank balances. Mate, it's impossible to disagree with that, Colin. Impossible to disagree with that, mate. You're absolutely bang on. Especially this regime, Dermot Desmond. I genuinely think that one of the worst things that could have happened to Celtic's ambition and the Celtic board's ambition was Rangers getting liquidated. Because they've looked at that scenario and they've went like that. We will never be in that position, man. We're too good for that. Ross Desmond even said as much last season in that AGM. I've been seeing loads of people post that, and every single time I see it, I get absolutely raging, man. I get raging at the arrogance and the hypocrisy. I take it you don't want this board meeting, this web meeting to be over then. Show some respect. Who do you think he's talking to, man? Who does Peter Lawwell? He's talking to the fans of this fucking great football club. Do you know what I mean? I'm so glad he's away, man. An arrogant man to come out and say that at AGM. You know what I mean? I get he was backing Ross Desmond up, right? But his ways and means are doing that. And the way he done that was absolutely despicable. The way he spoke to Celtic fans that day, in my opinion. You know what I mean? I'm glad that level of arrogance is away for Celtic. But obviously it's still there. We've still got Nicholson, we've still got the Desmonds, and the Desmonds are the issue here. I'm totally on board with people that want to protest to get them out. Honestly, man. Because the way they're treating the supporters is disgusting, man. Absolutely disgusting, but aye, that's basically, what I was saying. You're saying there about the money side of things in that, Colin. Like, all they going about now is we'll never be in that situation. And then, Ross Desmond's statement of, if you swing and miss, then you could leave yourself in real financial problems. We're not asking you to go and overspend. We're not asking you to go out and buy 20, 30 million pound players. You're not telling me for a single second. Now, I'm not a businessman, right? I am not a businessman. I'm not an accountant, right? But you're not telling me for a single second that Celtic can't afford to pay for players that they decide they don't want to go down the road of buying. You're not telling me we can't go out and get Maswinisi. You're not telling me we can't go out and get Elijah Just without putting the club into liquidation. You're not telling me that, man, because that's a complete and utter lie, right? So, we're not asking you to swing and miss, right? We're asking you to take the proper care of the football club by going out and buying players who we can financially afford, right? But what you're trying to do is you're trying to penny pinch. You're so worried about the bank balances, you're so worried about the checkbooks that you're not willing to go out and spend money on the first team squad. And, want players and you want fans and that to turn up to games. I've got to say as well, guys, Martin O'Neill yesterday in his press conference, I'm going to put this back up here because I'm going to talk about this. But in his press conference, he said, it's not like back 25 years ago where, fans will go to pre-season friendlies and stuff like that. It's not like that anymore, Martin O'Neill knows if this was any other year, that stadium would have been a lot fuller. I'm not saying it would have been a sellout yesterday. It wouldn't have been, right? But if that was this time last year or whatever, even last year, if that was this time last year, we would have had all stands would have had loads of people in them. It would not have been a case of one section of supporters. Middlesbrough supporters would have been outnumbered by 10 to 1, but it turned out that we had more Middlesbrough supporters at that game yesterday than Celtic fans. Martin O'Neill needs to kind of rein it in with that kind of side of things and admit there is a problem there. Admit there's a problem. It's like the first step if you've got an addiction is admitting there's a problem there in the first place. Martin O'Neill needs to admit that there's a problem there. There's a problem between the Celtic board and the Celtic fans. You know what I mean? You need to address the issue, Martin. You can't just go, it's not 25 years ago people want to go and, it's loads of money and all that. Celtic fans would turn up in numbers to every game. They would turn up to a game of balls at Parkhead if it was between Celtic and anybody, right? They would. But there is a real problem, a real disconnect between the Celtic supporters and the Celtic board right now. That, you can't sit there and deny that. Or you can sit and deny that, we've not tried hard enough for Ian Atchell, we've not tried hard enough for Sirachi. You can sit and make excuses for all that, but don't deny there's a problem there. Don't deny there's some sort of real issue between the board and the supporters, mate, because that isn't going to help things. You've got to admit that that's true, Martin. Do you know what I mean? And just focus on trying to make that better. But by being blindsided to it and totally ignoring the problem isn't going to help things. It just isn't going to help things. But my urge to Celtic fans would be to maybe give Martin O'Neill a wee bit of a break on this, on certain things, because there's too many. He's a puppet, he's a yes man, this and that. He's working for the football club, he's an employee of the football club, he's trying to make things better, he's wanting to kind of disrupt things even more, which isn't going to help the players, it isn't going to help the fans, it isn't going to help anything if Martin O'Neill comes out and starts slating everybody. Do you know what I mean? So, aye. Anybody get any questions or any comments they want to bring up, put them in the comments, I'll get to them before I shoot off. But I'll be live on TikTok soon as well. I'm going to come off this and go in there for a wee while, and we'll just chat about the same stuff and that. But remember, if you're not subscribed to this channel, please hit the subscribe button. It's completely free, people. It really does help my channel grow. Like I say, I'm also on TikTok, I'm also on Instagram and X. I would really like some more followers over there on Instagram, X and all that. So if you're watching this, please just jump over there if you've got those platforms as well and give me a wee follow. And don't forget to kind of comment on videos and share videos and stuff like that as well. That is how people grow, that is how channels grow and stuff like that. And it's all free, you know what I mean? That's the thing as well. All this content, you get on YouTubes and all that, it's all free, which is fantastic. So like I say, if anybody's got any comments, please leave them in, because I think I'm pretty much done for the day. I think I've kind of covered everything I wanted to talk about and stuff like that. But we'll see what happens over the next week or two, guys. I'm excited, but I'm also apprehensive because we've been let down many, many times before in the past and that, haven't we? So, but basically I covered, if you're going to rewatch this or whatever, I covered the Kyogo possibly maybe come back to Celtic. Kind of 50-50 on it. I would like him back, but in the same hand I would like somebody different, a new hero. And Martin O'Neill's comments after the game yesterday. But anyway, guys, I'll leave it at that. And thanks very much for watching. All the best. Hail, hail.